"I'm sorry, Mrs. Barrett, but your son's not going to survive." Those words started me on the biggest journey of discovery of my lifetime. It was the beginning words of a story that my mother told me often as I grew up. You see, my mother became very ill during my pregnancy. At 5.5 months, she had gone completely blind, to shut down one at a time. I was due on Valentine's Day, but come early November, the doctors made them make a choice. "Mrs. Barrett, Mr. Barrett, either you're going to pass with the baby, or we've got to deliver the baby now, but he will not survive." They delivered the baby. I survived I continued living, but it looks like Mrs. Barrett, he's got severe spinal issues, severe scoliosis, over 80-degree curvature of the spine. Some of his organs aren't fully developed. He may survive, but he's definitely not going to walk, and he's not going to have a normal everyday life. Well, I am walking now. According to this class, I'm probably not walking as much as I should be, but I am walking. Growing up, I had to struggle with the same questions that anybody growing up has to wrestle with. Who am I? Why am I here? What is this all about? Is there a God? If there is, how does he play into it? Well, because of that story, I came to a couple conclusions. I decided, and I should point out, this was the 70s when this happened. In the early 80s, and when I was a kid, I went, we had Guinness Books of World Records back then. They were a big deal. Looked in the Guinness Book of World Record. I missed the record for premature birth by just a couple weeks. It was something that didn't happen in that day and age. So I came to the conclusion, there must be a God, and because I survived, he must have a purpose for me. But I still had the question of, who is this God that I'm dealing with? Well, by the time I became a teenager, I pretty much had it figured out. You see, I looked at the people around me, looked at religions, and realized that what a bunch of crap that is. All its problems, all it's causing is violence. All it's causing is crap in the world around me. I don't want to have anything to do with any of that. And regarding this Bible, I'm way too smart to believe that. So I figured I'm a decently smart guy. Whatever anybody else comes up with, I can just as equally come up with my own view of God. So I invented my own. I called it Church of Chris. I was the pastor, the elder, the congregation, and my God was pretty good. He thought like me, acted like me, valued what I valued, and we got along pretty well. And I want to. I say this all lightly, but I did have a genuine belief, but it was a belief in a God completely of my own creation. But I did do my best to try to have some religious practice. So as I observed the world around me, I saw other people doing stuff. One day I was watching, I think I was bored watching the Catholic channel on TV, and saw people crossing themselves, and thought, that looks pretty cool. Can't hurt. So started throwing that into my practice. One day at a wedding, it was a wedding or a funeral, I don't know where, but I heard someone say this thing called the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven. So that sounds pretty interesting. Maybe I'll start incorporating that. What was that called that we did? The Lord's Prayer. Okay. So I went to my source of knowledge. This is pre-Google. The World Encyclopedia. We can afford Britannica in my family. We had the World Encyclopedia. So every night I'd go to the Book of El, and I'd open the Book of El to the Lord's Prayer, and there it was. And I'd read it every night until I eventually had it memorized. But for a while it was a religious practice. Every night, out came the Book of El, and let us read. Well, as I grew, I developed, my Church of Christ developed, and as high school deviancy turned to college deviancy, the God of the Church of Christ was okay with that. And things were going along great in the Church of Christ. May 4th, 2002, 1 week before my college graduation. I got a call late on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. I don't know exactly when. I'd been driving that night for the bus system. I was driving the drunk shift, which is basically, taking all the drunks home from all their parties. So I had just been in bed for a little bit, and the phone rang. Picked it up, and it was my father. My sister, my only sibling, my younger sister, 15 years old, had been killed in a car accident just a half mile from our house. The Church of Christ didn't know how to deal with that. The Church of Christ had no theology of how to handle anything like that. So the Church of Christ didn't die that night to dissolve into no faith, but it got put on the back burner for a while. Well, after college, I spent a couple months driving around the country. I got my old '89 Toyota Tercel and lived out of it for about 2.5 months driving around. And one night I was staying in New Orleans for a couple days, walking down Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Well, I was stumbling down Bourbon Street in New Orleans, going from bar to bar. And I came across this group of folks, and they were wearing Repent or Perish T-shirts, and they were up on ammo boxes, yelling, "You're gonna burn!" And it was great because it reconfirmed everything I thought I knew about religion. It reconfirmed everything I thought I knew about, these Christians, even worse than Georgia Tech graduates in particular. And the Church of Christ had a revival that night. I now had confirmation that is not what I want to be. If that's what religion is, if that's what Christianity is, hypocritical, narrow-minded, hateful, I'm right, you're wrong, then count me out. Church of Christ is the way to go. Well, after college, I came here, and an amazing thing happened. I met a girl at work, which was pretty amazing in and of itself, but even more than that, she was pretty, which was great. So I started pursuing her, but there was a problem. She was one of these Christians, and she went to church. So I thought, well, she wants to go to church. I'm not doing anything Sunday mornings. I'm pretty much sleeping during that time. So fake it till you make it. So if that's going to help me get to making it, then giddy up, let's go. Come on, let's do this church thing. So I was there every Sunday. But a surprising thing happened. I met a gentleman there who started talking to me about these things of faith. And he didn't talk to me about Bullhorn. In fact, he invited me to lunch. For a couple months, once a week, meeting with him. And he began to share with me things that I already thought I assumed I understood. Most of all, he shared with me that if I wanted to understand who this God was that I was dealing with, I didn't have to make him up in my mind. I didn't, worse, have to look in the mirror to see him reflected back at me. But I could look at a historical person of Jesus, and that's who God was. Well, for the first time in my life, I started to truly explore with an open mind. I started to truly look at the evidence and was willing to follow that evidence wherever it took me. I've been following that person of Jesus for over 11 years now, and it's not been easy. In fact, it's been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also been the greatest thing I've ever done. I know that each of us goes through a journey of discovery. What I would encourage you to do is keep searching. Keep searching. And please be willing to go wherever the evidence leads you. Thank you.